Roll call. Seems all my commissioners are here except Commissioner Valdez, who has an excused absence. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. There's a slight change in the way we're doing business this evening in that we're not going to have an opening citizen comment period. The things on the agenda today both pertain to approvals and authorizations for variances and a special use permit. I'm assuming most of the people here in the audience are here for that, and there'll be two opportunities to talk about those in the public hearing section. So we're going to move right into the approvals and authorizations. The first is a petition by Sean on behalf of ACTC Investments for properties zoned office and professional B2, located at 18875 FM 2252 in Garden Ridge, Texas. Further described as Lot 10, Block 12, Forest of Garden Ridge subdivision. The petition requests the following variances to ordinance number 13-122018, Section 6, Commercial Zones, 6.1, Office and Professional District B2. The first variance is in Section 6.1.4.5, is for impervious cover. The ordinance states as written, the impervious coverage to include buildings, pavements, etc., shall not be more than 1/3 of the lot area and must, in any case, allow adequate open area for wastewater treatment and disposal. The petition requests impervious cover of 42%. The second part of the request for a variance is 6.1.4.3 in the side yard, pertains to alley rights of way of 15 feet down each side property line shall provide access to the rear alley. The city shall determine required right-of-way improvements based upon location, type, and density of projected structures. The petition requests to eliminate the side yard alley due to interference with natural drainage of the property. We intend to hold a public hearing on these matters. We'll start with a presentation, I guess, by Sean Willis.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Sean Willis. I am a partner and owner of Accuform Architecture, and I'm here to represent ACTC Investments. I'm a current resident of the city of Garden Ridge. I've been here since 2010. I've actually served on this commission in the past, and I've also served on my local HOA board. So I'm very involved in the community, and I'm excited to be a part of this project and to present it to you guys tonight. I think it's a great fit for the city, and I think it's a great use of this piece of property. First slide here is just some renderings of the buildings, or of the building that we're proposing. We'll get into that a little bit later. If you could please go to the next slide. So the property is a 1.52 acre tract at the southwest corner of FM 2252 and Tonkawa Path. It's lot 10, highlighted in that orange box there. The plat was officially recorded with the Forest of Garden Ridge subdivision in 2005. If you go to the next slide, please, it zooms into the actual plat of the property. The properties along FM 2252 were platted as with the intended use to be commercial lots. This plat here shows all the encumbrances incurred by the lot, by the plat. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this slide gives an overview aerial of the piece of property in its current state, with several photographs that give views into the property, just to give everybody an idea of what we're looking at. The current piece of property is zoned B2, office professional, and it is the proposed use that we're proposing is in line with the master land use plan recently approved by the city of Garden Ridge. The property here has been cleared. The brush, low brush, and scrub trees have been cleared in order to provide surveying for the property for the development planning of the project. So the state that you're seeing here is not the current state as it sits today. The first photograph up there in the right-hand corner, view 1, that is where our proposed driveway is. You can see where their arrow is, and the number 1, that's the view looking into the property. We are only allowed one point of access into the property, and that is at that point where that arrow is at. And we will get into that further when we get into the alley access variance. The other view, view number 3, actually that's labeled incorrectly. The middle picture there, view number 2, is the view of the residential property line to the west. The adjacent property line there. There is a heavy vegetative line of trees that remain there, and our plan is to keep that, as many of those trees as possible, to maintain a barrier between the commercial development and the residential property that exists today. If you scroll down a little bit, that bottom photograph is another view from the corner of FM 2252 and Tonkawa Pass, looking into the property. There's some vegetation there that was remnants of where the Forest of Garden Ridge sign was. We plan on trying to keep some of that vegetation if possible. The sign has since been removed. The sign was removed because there was no easement recorded on the plat for that sign to exist. So the owners removed it because it was in the way of development. The bottom photo there, view 4, is looking at the southern property line, which is the city of San Antonio ETJ right outside the property line. Again, there's a heavy vegetative line that we plan on maintaining. If you go to the next slide. So this is the overall site plan that we're proposing. We are proposing a 8,974 square foot office building. We've got 94 parking spaces proposed, a detention pond to control all the water drainage, and an on-site sewage facility with a drip irrigation system. I don't know if this little laser pointer will work, if y'all can see. But as I mentioned earlier, our main entry off of Tonkawa Pass will be here. We are coming in immediately curving away from this property line to allow for parking. We have 2 main driveways with parking on both sides in the front of the property and along the western property line. The main entry to the building is this point right here, where the owners will occupy 75% of the building. This area here will be about 25% of the building remaining as lease space. Tenants to be known, we don't know who they are yet. The intent is for the owner to essentially occupy the entire building as they grow. We are proposing a monument sign here. Again, we'll get into that, the details of that a little bit later in the special use permit. We also are proposing some smaller monument signs out front of each one of the lease spaces. They're proposed to be about 3 foot tall with just signage for the owners or the tenants that are inside those protected spaces. We don't intend any kind of signage to be on the building at this point. Down here we have our driveway. We also have our dumpster located here. We've got it tucked into the back of the property. The dumpster will have 8 foot high CMU block walls. It'll be a split face CMU material, so it'll look nice and it will blend with the building. We also have metal gates to screen the dumpster entirely from view. In the back of the property, this gray shaded area here is our detention pond area. It has been designed to handle all of the impervious cover that we were proposing today. In the back of the area here, this little gray area here is actually our tanks for our septic system. This gray area, and this gray area are for our septic drain fields. Both of the septic drain field is proposed to be a drip system, not a spray system. And then this area right here we see that's dashed is our reserve area in case we ever do need to increase the size of the septic system for capacity issues. All the improvements designed within the site limits, they do all meet local, state, and federal codes and laws. I will say the septic system has already been submitted to the Comal County Engineer's Office, and it has been reviewed, and it has received a permit for construction. We've also sent the plans into the Comal County Fire Department office to review our fire lane, which is in the front and in the side. They've also given us a written approval via email for those fire protection plan. As I mentioned, this is an owner-occupied building. The owners are residents of the city of Garden Ridge. They have lived in Garden Ridge for the last 20 years. They have operated their business in Garden Ridge for the last 15 years. With that, I would like to bring up Tracy Blackwell and Kathy Harm, the owners of the building, so they can explain the business and the intended use.
Hi there, it'll just be me, but I wanted to just say my name's Tracy Blackwell. My spouse and I own the property that's being discussed tonight. As he mentioned, we're 20-year residents, and you know what? We're very proud to call Garden Ridge our home. We purchased the 1.52 acres and that we're developing in May of 2019. We submitted our special use permit in August of 2019. As a side note, the property was originally purchased by R.C. Matthews Enterprise from Laredo GFG Development in 2012, which means it has been available to purchase on at least 2 different occasions. Anyone could have purchased this property, including another developer or a resident of the area or the Forest of Garden Ridge HOA, anyone. We chose to purchase it as we were located in Garden Ridge and it was already zoned commercial and already platted. The development of this property has been partly held up by the Forest of Garden Ridge HOA due to the monument sign that was improperly placed on the private property. After several communications through attorneys, which was an unplanned increase in cost, our family agreed to be a good neighbor, and we donated the rock monument back to the HOA. But in that generosity, it actually cost us additional money, as the intentions were to use these rocks as part of the landscape and development of the property. I want to remind P&Z that we're residents of the city. We're not out-of-state developers, out-of-state investors, but rather 2 businesswomen who live and love our city of Garden Ridge. The building will be located in the gateway, right when you're coming down 2252 to the gateway of City of Garden Ridge, and will hopefully continue the standard of what Wes Cleckley, who's in our audience, has built at 19269 FM 2252, where I currently rent from. We want the city to be proud of this development, and we are confident that we have taken actions in that direction. My agency has 11 employees, 8 full-timers, 2 part-timers, 1 remote employee who rarely comes to the office. We do most of our work over the phone, which results in very low foot traffic at our office. So quite frankly, I would think this makes us a very attractive and ideal business to be located in this location. Candidly, we're quite confused at the outcry of the HOA, but can only assume is from the initial purchase and removal of the HOA sign, which again was erroneously placed by the neighborhood developer. And honestly, we didn't have anything to do with that. Which, by the way, they'll also be faced with the same situation from the property across from the development if the landowner decides to sell or develop or remove that other monument sign. The torturous interference with the contract of the purchase of this property has got to stop by the HOA. We've hired a local architect who lives in Garden Ridge. Our builder, Clyde Marbach, who's also in our audience, has been in business for 38 years. They're not strangers. We're trying to invest back in our community with local residents and outstanding members of our community. My business in Garden Ridge has been in Garden Ridge for 15 years already, and we've proven ourselves to be a great corporate citizen focused on community outreach and community servant leadership, which is actually very much embedded in our company values. You can just look us up on Facebook, website, and anybody can see that we're a highly professional, and premier agency. And as an agency owner, let me just go on to say that we're just not the average agency. I'm on the National MetLife National Panel. I'm one of 10 agents to represent the entire United States with MetLife. We're a recipient of Make More Happen, which we were awarded a $10,000 grant for a local nonprofit. We've been an elite agency with Safeco for 3 years in a row, Safeco Award of Excellence for the last 5 years in a row, Progressive Platinum, Travelers High Achiever. We're extremely involved in our community with nonprofits, been the past president of RACAP, which is a local food pantry that serves our community, Tri-County Chamber of Commerce, Texas Wildlife Association, Boy Scouts of America, John's Kids. I could go on, but I won't. What I can say is we're looking forward to receiving our special use permit so we can begin the development of our property and continue to serve in our community work.
Thank you, Tracy. With that, if you could go back to the site plan, please. I'd like to get into the actual specific requirements that we're requesting for the impervious cover increase per ordinance 13. Go back to the previous one, please. Thank you. So we are asking for an increase in impervious cover from the 1/3% or 1/3 of required by ordinance to 42%, an increase of about 9%. And to be clear to everybody in the audience, impervious cover is a non-pervious surface that doesn't absorb rainfall. So whether that be concrete, sidewalk, asphalt, patios, roofing materials, that's what we're talking about with regards to impervious cover. We have been working with the city engineer and with city staff over the last several months to try to come up with a good solution to make sure everything is working within the property. I think we've demonstrated we have adequate septic area, and we've also received a permit for that septic system, so we do have that approval. The county has given its blessing. And further, to reduce the amount of impervious cover that we originally proposed, we are proposing to pour these spaces here, these spaces here that are hatched in pervious concrete. Pervious concrete has been used on several properties along FM 2252 that have been recently developed, and pervious concrete essentially allows the water to permeate through the concrete into the subgrade, therefore it doesn't need to be channeled to the detention pond for runoff. We think that we've designed the site to work while it meets the owner's needs for their current needs and their future growth, while making sure we have adequate detention, adequate septic systems, and adequate parking for the development. I don't think we're asking for anything excessive. We know that similar variances for this type of use has been granted over the last 10 years for properties that have been developed in Guard Ridge. It's very difficult to develop property at a 33% impervious cover and try to compete with neighboring cities that allow more impervious cover and still maintain a market rate product to maintain parking, leasing, and even just being able to finance a building with a bank. To move on to the next variance request is the side yard alley. If you could go to the next slide, please. So this diagram here is a blow-up of the plat. As you can see, letter C here, up on the chart here, it says 1 foot non-access easement, and highlighted yellow is where C is around the property. So everybody here just is aware that our only access by plat is at the point that we're proposing it. Because of that, we are also proposing the site plan arrangement that we currently have. If you can go to the next slide, please. This slide is our fire protection plan that we have run past the Comal County Fire Marshal for approval. The highlighted red area is actually our fire lane, allowing emergency access to the building. The little purple squares are our current fire hydrants, and the blue is indicating our hose lay requirements from the fire lanes and from the fire hydrants. The fire protection plan is compliant with the fire code and has been blessed by the fire marshal. The current property to the south is not currently platted. If access is needed to this property, inner property access, because 2252 TxDOT will not allow driveways anywhere at this point, We do have the ability to extend our driveway to the neighboring lot to provide emergency access to this lot if needed. That's not something we're contending at this point, but it is an option as development continues along FM 2252. With that, that wraps up our presentation for the variance requests. I don't know if y'all want us to continue into the special use presentation or if we want to stop at this point and then pick it up for the next.
Please stop at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think now what we do is hear from the neighborhood affected by the building. And hear what the neighbors, your neighbors think of this. By the crowd, we know there's some opposition, and please limit your remarks, if you can, to 3 minutes. Mr. Willis, having been on the commission before, knows that we can't respond to anything you say, and so he was aware that by law we can't respond to anything you say at this point in time. So we may look away from you, may look down, take notes or whatever, but we are paying attention. So don't think that our inattention to you by eye-to-eye contact means we're not listening at all. So there was no sign-up sheet for this public hearing, part of the public hearing.
Commissioner Miller, or Chairman Miller, if you will, just when we're ready to start the public hearing, please donate the time that we begin the public hearing.
Okay. Then I guess we're ready to start the public hearing at this time, which would be 6:22 p.m. I'm asking for anyone in the audience who wants to speak on this to step to the podium in an orderly fashion, please.
Chairman Miller,
And please, okay.
I do ask that anybody that does decide to speak, if they will come sign up or sign the sheet with me when they're done speaking.
Okay, additional, when they're done speaking? Okay, when they're
Yes.
done speaking, you heard the directive, so we have legal record of who spoke and where they live, I guess. Please come forward. State your name and address, and then in addition to that, when you're through, sign up with the city secretary.
I'm Billy Chamberlain. I live at 8810 Comanche Path, the only adjoining property to the proposed construction. I'm asking for the City Planning and Zoning Commission to reject the variances that have been submitted by ACTC Investment Company, owner Tracy Blackwell. The ordinances are there to protect the citizens of Garden Ridge. We want to protect our investment. We have a Class A home. ACTC is trying to overbuild on 1.5 acre lot by using all the easement areas. It's a 8,974 foot square building, single story, with 49 parking spots. Really, on 1.5 acres of land? Everything proposed on the plot plan is to make ACC property value go up, but at the same time lowering my residential property value. I would have not bought this house if the variances were in place. If somebody had put the plot plan up, I'd appreciate it, but the ingress on the plot plan is right next to my lot. Noise is going to be an issue. The mouth of the driveway is in my easement area that I have maintained for 8 years, and I have sprinklers there. But it's right where it curves, it's in my area. And is this legal? The property line is approximately 50 feet from my back porch. I would request that the driveway be moved 30 feet away from the property line and out of the easement area. Impervious land cover. Before we purchased our home, we were told that they could not build within 30 feet easement area plus a 15-foot building setback. We knew that someday there would be a commercial building there, but with these ordinances in place. We were here first. We do not want parking in that 30-foot easement area joining our residential property due to noise. It's right at my property line, 50 foot from my back fence, or my house. No fence on the property line. I saw on this plot plan, all the ones that were mailed out show that there is a fence, so I'm confused there. And if it is, it should not be on the property line. We have offered to meet with Tracy Blackwood several times. Tracy Blackwood stated every time I saw her that she wanted to be a good neighbor and that the new building or land would be just like the lease building, and go look at where she leases. So I took pictures and brought our plot plan here and showed y'all. And anyway, at the leased building where she's at, there's at least 30 feet of trees, cedars and oaks and shrubs, and you cannot see the residential homes, which are 50 to 60 feet away. The plan shows the owner removing all
Mr.
the cedar
Chamberlain?
trees and
Mr.
shrubs
Chamberlain?
in the easement area, and noise will be a major issue.
Mr. Chamberlain, your time to speak is up.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, last comment is, please look at these issues as if you were the adjoining property owner. Thank you.
Next, please.
Good evening. Tony Frasco, 8802 Wildwind Park. I'm here tonight. I was a former elected official, and I know what you're going through. I'm all for the improvement and ratables in town, but I always looked at laws being with blinders on. You cannot buy a piece of property and then expect to overbuild on that property. If you have a vision of what you want to build, you don't pick an acre and a half to do it. You want to increase 9%. 9%, and it's going to cause a problem. And hopefully, you board members will abide by the law. And I don't want to stop any commercial building in town. I'm all for it. But we have laws, and laws are to be enforced, and that's what you're here for. I shudder to think that all the improvements that we're going to be faced with are going to be up for, oh, well, we bought an undersized lot, but we want a huge building on it. Well, that's not the case. You buy a lot to conform with your building. You don't buy the lot and then try and get a variance. And I've went through all of this 40 years ago. So I know what you're going through, but please respect our laws. Because if we don't have our laws, we don't have a town. It'll be open city. So I thank you very much and for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Rod Chamberlain. I live at 8807 Cherokee Path, Garden Ridge. I'm here as the president of the Homeowners Association for the Forest of Garden Ridge, and also as obviously a person who lives within that Homeowners Association. One point of order is that the monument stones, yes, Tracy and Kathy did agree to go ahead and work with the HOA to go ahead and move those stones, which I know the city is more than aware of. But there's a point that we did receive a letter from their attorney, and their attorney said either get the rocks off. If you don't get them off, then we'll go ahead and get them off and we'll send you the bill. But I do appreciate them letting us go ahead and take the stones from that side. Moving on to more important things, this is a residential community, and we have a commercial property going next to the residential community. This is not about Tracy, this is not about the HOA, and it's not about me. It's about how do we make the two work together. And that's what I'm asking for, is that we figure out a way to compromise and make this work. We're going in for 2 variances, that's what they're asking for. And yet they come in and they say, well, you know, we've got to put the ingress egress where it's at because that's the way it's platted. Well, really? Would you want to have a commercial property be right next to your property? So, you know, you could come in and talk to the HOA and say, you know what? We understand the concern. We'll go ahead and we'll request another variance and we'll move it over 30 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, whatever that comes into play. So I'm asking for some consideration. I am concerned with the fact that public notice went out in the 15 days. There was a plat survey that was included that said that there was a fence. Now I'm seeing tonight that there's not a fence. I'm confused on whether or not we do or do not have a fence that's up. I have given my questions to the committee. I've also went ahead and given an overview of what I think is a reasonable way to approach this so there is common ground across the board for all parties concerned that is cost effective and makes common sense for the neighborhood on both sides. I look forward to hopefully getting an invite to the open house, but at the same time, I think we need to take into consideration the variances are there. They're there for, the ordinance is there for a reason, and they're there. If you want to change the ordinances, change them. But the variances, they need to be like the Holy Grail. And I ask that you look at it from that perspective, from that area. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate everything that you're doing.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Charles Reese, and I live at 8903 Comanche Path in Garden Ridge, and it's kind of candy-cornered from the property in question. It does not affect my property line. I'm here on behalf of, I think, a lot of homeowners who bought in the Forest of Garden Ridge. I bought in 2005, so I've been here probably the first house that was in that subdivision. And the people who bought in there bought with the idea that it was going to be all residential. We weren't going to be having to accommodate commercial businesses. However, I think all the people who live there now believe that it is the right of these people to put their business in. And no one's debating that. What we are debating is, will they live within the limits of what the city of Garden Ridge have asked businesses to comply with? And I think once you start that process of allowing businesses to go outside of that, you've kind of got yourself on a slippery slope. If you think this is the first time this is going to happen, it's not. You're going to be faced with this again and again as 2252 continues to develop. So I would simply ask you to stop and think about this, because your decision here tonight will end up setting a precedence for all the businesses that go in down 2252 and the conflict that they're going to have with homeowners. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak?
Rebecca Sasseville, 8914 Comanche Path. Mine is the same thing. I get that everybody's in Garden Ridge, proud citizens. However, it's a community that's directly impacted by this. When we went to go look for a house, we could have chosen to live anywhere. We wanted a residential neighborhood to raise our family, to retire and to feel comfortable in. So with that being said, our realtor did not show us the back of a dumpster, did not show us the back of an easement, did not show us the back of an industrial plant. They showed us a neighborhood, and it was a neighborhood that we could see ourselves spending time in. So with these two variances, like the previous gentleman said, it's a slippery slope. If you grant this, then you grant that. It's kind of like dealing with the child. If they ask for this, and I know I can get that, then I'm gonna push you a little bit further. We're not asking for anything that you wouldn't ask in your backyard for your family, that you would appreciate. Our investment is our home. Their investment is a business. We respect that. But what is hard to swallow is that when you purchase something, you do due diligence prior to that. You know what the parameters are. You know what the specs are. The ordinances are in place to protect everyone that's involved, residential and the industrial sector. With that being said, these two variances do set a precedent, but they also impact all the residential value for it. And so just keep in mind that when you're voting on these two lines that are yes, a simple yes or a simple no to you, it affects our property value. The 49 families that are in there, it affects us directly and impacts that. Had we known that we were going to live behind the industrial park, we definitely would have picked somewhere else. So with that being said, I would strongly urge and request that these variances be denied because you knew the information going into it, right? Fitting a square into a circle with a hammer isn't going to work, and this is an example of that. Thank you.
Ma'am, need you decided. Anyone else?
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Jeannie Kenzo. I live in 19003 Seminole Pass. And so I agree with Mr. Billy Chamberlain. I do not agree with these variances. And so take that into consideration, please. These are 49 people that have invested a lot of money into their homes, and we want to preserve that. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Mary Hernandez. I live at 8910 Comanche Path. What I want to say is that as a resident, we have lived there since 2008, and we have followed every one of the rules, whether it's with the easements or requirements, everything that we built on our property to add value to it. We followed it. We came over here. We knew what we could and could not do before we went and bought there. We looked at our property. So we have followed it. So all we're asking is that the same applies to the now people who have bought this property. They knew what it was. It's not a big property, 1.5 acres. They talk about low foot people coming. 49 spaces, I think, is what they're asking for, parking spaces. So if it's that low, why do you need 49 parking spaces? So all I'm asking is, as a resident, you know, I value my property. I don't want my property value to go down. So we're all there, 49 residents within Forest of Garden Ridge. So we all follow, like I said, the ordinances that come out, with our easements, whatever we have to do. So why shouldn't they? Because they're property owners, that's all we're asking. We know that they have a right to build there. We're not questioning that. We've already been through that. They can build there, but all we're asking is your consideration to deny these variances requests because they already knew what they could or could not do in that property. And now they're asking for exceptions and variances to do what they wanted all along. So all we're asking is that you consider also what we want as being residents of Garden Ridge. We have just as much right. Thank you.
Greetings. I'm Steve Gallitz. I live at 8907 Comanche Path. And concerning the ordinances and all that, I'm kind of looking at what happens in the future, okay? Oh, can you hear me now? Verizon commercial. All right. But in regards to the future, there's problems that I could see with this business on the corner there at Tonkawa. One would be parking. What if the 49 spaces aren't enough? Or if somebody decides with those 49 spaces, I don't have enough room to park there, all of a sudden, Tonkawa Path becomes a major place where people start parking. We do have a mail area right across from that property where a lot of vehicles stop, pick their mail up. In addition, if they decide to move in the future, what type of business goes in there, who moves into the 25% vacancy, and maybe the board here can help me. Probably what most residents here don't want, and this could be a retail, we don't want a mini mart in there that will in turn drive probably a lot of trash, car traffic, all times of the night and that. So I'd like you to consider, you know, when you put this in, what's going to be the ramifications 10 years down the road in terms of parking issues in our neighborhood? What hours would those businesses keep if the current business owners decide to move and sell it to somebody? What impact would that have on the homeowners? So I'd like you just to consider, you know, not the near term, but what's going to be 5, 10 years. I like Garden Ridge. I think it's a great community. And when we bought here, we bought for basically, it looked like a great neighborhood. We'd like to keep it that way. So please consider that in your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Good afternoon. Wes Cleckley. I live at 1915 Windswept Cove, so I drive down Tonkawa Pass to get home every day. Been in this community for 10 years. My wife's born and raised here. I've got a business here, go to church here, live here. My kids go to school here. I'm obviously in support of Tracy and her building. You know, I've heard a lot of comments tonight, and all that I respect everybody's opinion, but it seems like it's more of the fact that a building's going in there and not necessarily about the impervious cover, because I don't know how going from 33% doesn't affect your property value and 42% does. And this is not going to set a precedent if this gets approved tonight, because I want to make sure everybody is aware. Whenever I bought my properties, I was informed that Tony Overman was able to achieve 48% impervious cover variance. Therefore, I applied for the same thing for the building that I'm in. Interlink Mortgage there. Tracy offices next door to me. I also built the building next door with a 48% impervious cover variance as well. If anybody's ever built any commercial properties, you would realize real quick that it's not economically feasible to develop a property, a commercial property, and keep at 1/3 impervious cover restriction. That's a whole nother debate. I mean, I think that's a ridiculous amount. I think it's got, if the city wants to promote some good growth, some good, decent, nice commercial properties in the city, that's going to have to be looked at, but that's another discussion. But this is not the first time this has happened. I got 48% twice. Tony Overman got it. The law firm got a higher variance as well. They're asking for 42%, and we're dragging it out and keeping them from having it. I think it's crazy. I think it's, I don't know, I don't really understand it. And just the fact that there's going to be a commercial building there, I don't really understand that as well, because everybody bought in this neighborhood. And just a few hundred yards down the road from this lot, you've got the Wild West of Bracken where everything goes, right? Everything goes, anything goes. So she's building a very nice professional building, just like the two that I built there on 2252. But I know you guys hear the music coming from Bracken during the night, because I can hear it back in Wildwind. Y'all are okay with living there for that, but you're going to be bothered by a nice professional building there on the corner. So I'd ask you to reconsider y'all's feelings. I'd ask you guys to consider approving this tonight. And as far as the concern about the type of business that's going to be in there, if you wanted any type of business to be your neighbor, it would be these ladies right here and this type of business they're in. They're good citizens. They pour into the community. Their office hours are during the business hours, as opposed to anything else that could possibly go there. Because anybody could have bought this property, and they did. Thank you very much.
Sir? Does anybody else wish to speak at this time? Yes, sir.
I already have a letter that I had turned in just in case I couldn't be here. My name is Keith Kensel. I live at 19003 Seminole Pass. I am one of the 10 homeowners that reside within 300 feet of the proposed building site. I do not have a problem with our building. I do not. But like this gentleman said earlier, he does not live in our neighborhood. He drives through it. We live there. I am opposed to the two variances because I am a good neighbor to my neighbor that lives in my neighborhood, Mr. Chamberlain. I won't take up any more of your time. You don't live in our neighborhood. Don't tell us what we want to hear or don't want to hear. City of Bracken or Village of Bracken, it doesn't bother me. But coming home from work late one night after I've traveled 300 miles for a soccer game, not being able to park or get into my driveway because people have parked on my street because they don't have enough parking, I do not see how that would be my problem if you do what the voters have done you, asked you to do when they voted for you. That's all I got. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak?
Hello. Good evening. My name is Rebecca Plant, and my family and I, we live at 8730 Benzel Lane, and just have been Garden Ridge residents since 2016, and really admired wanting to live over here, coming from the other side of 35. I do believe in growth. I believe in business, and I understand and hear the hearts of the citizens and the residents that live in the neighborhood that this building is going next to. However, in knowing that it's okay that there is going to be a building there and that there's going to be a business at some point, I do support and believe in this business that Tracy Blackwell has. She's an incredible woman. She has an incredible business, and she's going to have a great opportunity to be able to bring the highlights of what Garden Ridge offers here. Again, I drive down Marbach Lane, going the back road, and I don't really like a lot of the things that I see as far as the type of structures or other businesses that are nearby, but I know the quality of work that this gentleman's going to be building, and I work at Interlink Mortgage as an independent loan officer, so I believe that it's going to be a fantastic building and add incredible growth and attention to Garden Ridge, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else, please?
Good evening. My name is Clyde Marbach. I am the builder that has been elected to build this project, and just wanted to say a few things. Our office here in Garden Ridge have for many years have lived here. I do not now. I recently moved from Garden Ridge. But we've always strived to keep the integrity of Garden Ridge. Any prospective client come in, we try to make sure we keep it a residential appearance on the buildings, which this architect has done. I do know that on other properties down 2252 that we've done, there's a 20-foot green belt. On this particular property, there is not, okay? But we have done everything we can to keep the integrity of those trees. The architect has done tree wells, we've worked things in. We're talking about the impervious cover, which I as a builder also know that Garden Ridge is very stringent. That is a good thing. It keeps the integrity. There's lots of trees. We don't want to tear down trees, and we do every effort not to. But the 9% additional coverage here that we're talking about, we're doing this. One of the reasons is so we're not parking on the street to bother anybody, okay? There's enough parking spots, we're off the street. The other thing is, you don't put the parking spots, I guess you could just park on the grass and tear the grass up. So we're not asking for a whole lot. I would hope y'all would consider this. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to come forward at this time? I think there's two things that, as chair, I should point out. I heard it mentioned during some of the comments that we are elected officials. That's false. We're appointed officials. We're volunteers. We all live in the city. It's a requirement to be on the commission. What we do is vote as volunteers and appointed officials on what comes before us, and we make recommendations to the city council. They are the elected officials. The final say goes to city council. The second point is, we are a working committee, commission, and we had no access to all the particulars of this project until last week. We've diligently looked at the plans and heard what you guys had to say about it, but by law, we couldn't discuss it amongst ourselves until tonight. So at this point in time, what you will see is a commission meeting, while we discuss it, what you guys have presented to us, unless I'm stopped by the attorney like I'm getting waved at now.
So if you will, Dr. Miller, we do need to note the time that we're closing the public hearing.
Thank you. We're closing the public hearing at 6:51 p.m. As I was saying, right now, we'll start discussing it amongst ourselves. Bear with us if you will. But this is the first time we've had to discuss it amongst ourselves as a commission. I'll start on my left side. Ms. Owen, do you have anything? Ms. Owen, I might add, is our longest tenured commissioner. She may remember some of the things that people referred to when they gave their comments. Some of the other things people referred to preceded my time on the commission, and most of, well, just about everybody else. Mr. Heyer may have been here at that time too. Maybe she can let some insight into that. Ms. Owens, I hope you will.
Well, thank you for putting me on the first spot. Was there anything in particular that you were interested in my commenting on particularly, or on 2252 there?
I'd be interested. I've heard several people say that, and I heard by reputation that Garden Ridge had very stringent impervious cover requirements. Yes. I'm not a developer, so I don't know. It stands to reason if you can use more of the land, you can make more money. That's obvious to me. But I've heard it said several times that these variants have been granted, and it's obvious they have been granted because the buildings are in fact there. Do you recall some of the arguments at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Help me with that, if you will.
That was one point that I picked up from the comments, that going through the development of 2252 back along, I guess it would be the west side of the property. I don't have good directions, but where the commercial development is there, that has always been an issue in our commercial development, that we have a different standard that we had talked about in our ordinance 13 for impervious cover for residential was lower for residential, which was somewhat workable in the residential area. Moving into the commercial development, it was more restrictive than most, and I don't want to say that it's comparable, but most other cities have a higher rate of cover, and in almost all cases, and one of the gentlemen's, I wrote down, I don't know which name it was, Wes, made the comment that on 2 occasions that he recalled that it was up to 48. And after having those brought before the commission and in discussion, I can remember that each one of those 48 percentage that were passed as discussions were 2 or 3 hour discussions at every meeting, because no one wanted to raise that. However, it's very difficult in commercial development to let that property be developed and put in everything you need to on a commercial where you have air conditioning and parking lots and rights of way and on the property. It just eats up your property. And this commission, I don't know that these commissioners were in that discussion. Maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago that we were talking about amending that. I don't know if y'all remember that. Maybe Dave, you were here. I think you might have been here. We were talking about raising that limit to about 35 to 36 or 42%, somewhere in through there. And then we got involved in other discussions on the whole ordinance 13 rewrite, and we kind of set that aside. But I think at that time, the commission was in agreement that we needed to raise up that to meet the requirements that we needed for the development on 2252, so that we could not have to have variances up and down 2252. So I think that the 9% is not out of line in raising what we were discussing at that time. And I believe Mr. Willis might have been on the commission at that time. I don't want to point anything out, but I know we had this discussion around that 5-year mark that back a few years. So I personally don't feel that 9% is excessive for commercial development. Having worked personally in commercial development, knowing what's required, that doesn't seem out of line. But Mr. Overman had received 48%, which at that time we were shocked that we allowed that, but because it was outside of our residential. But we never did anything at that time. All we had done was residential, and we had not done commercial development. That's not anything that we had actually worked on. But if we're going to allow that development to bring us in nice properties, the word nice is not the right word, but properties that are going to fit our construction, our development for Garden Ridge, that was probably going to be something we're going to have to take a look at. So I think that that's not out of line. That would be my comment on the impervious cover. May I go on with others? Or do you want to talk about the impervious cover and then come back? Okay. The other, I do have some discussion about the fence. I too am concerned. I've looked at the paperwork I received, and I know that the special use says that there will be some type of landscaping.
Let's not get into the special use part.
Okay,
Let's stick with the impervious cover.
Okay, just
Mm-hmm. The impervious cover in the side alley.
in the side alley. The only thing about the side alley is that it is close to the residential. I don't know that the side alley could be moved. I don't know if that's a possibility. TxDOT, I didn't know if that entrance, the entrance is very close, but I don't know if it could be moved. I didn't see anything that said that they had contrived to move that ingress and egress maybe to the middle. I don't know how close it is to the 2252, whether it could be moved back 30 feet. Somebody suggested moving it maybe to the center of the property. I don't know if that's a possibility or not. If that would eliminate the side alley. The side alley is not that, the side alley is negative if the fire department has agreed, they've agreed that it's not needed. It seems like the hoses are fit around it. I didn't see any problem with it.
Let me ask the attorney at this point in time. I heard it mentioned that by plat, that the egress and ingress had to be in that area. Is that a statement of fact?
All I can tell you for certain is that that is exactly what is listed on the plat. That's where that ingress and egress is located for that particular parcel, for that particular property. So in order for that to be changed, it would actually have to go through a replatting process. It's not a simple matter of just saying, well, we think we want to move that, because that is an actual legal description for a property with easements and access, ingress and egress.
That was probably platted that way, yeah. I didn't know if that would be a remedy that would satisfy the issue or not, because I didn't know how far they would have to replat everything to do that.
I had the same question, and that's why I asked the attorney. You have anything else, Ms. O? Mr. Dower.
On the impervious cover, I know in these commercial buildings of this nature having built numbers of those in San Antonio, where we had an acre and a half or 2 acres, we had to request, variance requests for impervious cover also because of the parking lots and the setbacks and fire access, all the things that we had to do. And on one, I got 60%, the other one, I got 51% when I applied, up from about 35, 40% to do that. I do know that on the corner, if I remember right, of 3009 and 2252 on that property, I think that we went, or one of the boards went as high as 50 on impervious covers. Not too long ago, we did that in there for what they were doing, because it's a 3.5 acre spot, but where it's at in the multi-story building, professional office building, when they put there, wouldn't have worked with 33%. There wasn't even enough room to put the building, much less a parking lot in. So I don't think a 9% is not out of hand for access in that. As far as the side yard on the entryway off of Tonka Pass coming in there, I'm not quite sure why that entrance drive is curved, and where it curves out, that it bumps in or over that, encroaches in that right of way. Is there a way to design the left side of that to get out of that area of encroachment, since it's only 2 feet or so? That I believe was what I understood. And up in this corner right
Yeah,
here.
that's what I didn't understand that.
So I know it swings out and wides out in that area, so is that a design effort in there? Is there some way, because I don't know what, I know it'll help with commercial truck traffic, you know, bringing packages and delivery and dump trucks or garbage disposals and things like that. So those vehicles can get in and out of it, because that's a pretty narrow pathway in and out of there as it is now. But that would be just a question for the architect and engineer. Is there a particular reason other than turning in and out of that property there?
The apron.
Right, the apron end of it. If that's the part that's encroaching, is the apron, where it flares out on the end on this drawing at the bottom. So, because it looks like some of the other part of that, and I think it says, I don't know how many feet that is. I don't have a ruler on me, but how many feet that is just by design. Could that design be modified that it goes straight off that and doesn't encroach into that property? You know, as far as building designs and type, I think the building architecturally and impact as far as the appearance would fit into what we have worked for 3 years to try to design in our zoning and ordinances to bring into the community. I've been here since 2002. My family's been here since 1852. So I'm a little familiar with Garden Ridge. So, and we're a bedroom community that has to realize that we are going to commercialize at some point in time to continue with tax revenue and revenue into the city to afford our fire department, our police departments, and other health remedies that we have here, because we are about sold out. So we don't want to increase any, in my opinion, increase any more taxes on homeowners. So some of these things are going to come, and the comment that we're going to face this a lot is true, because we're just starting to commercialize 2252. But main question is where we are encroaching into that easement area. One, the question was, is it legal to do that? We'll have to defer to the city attorney for that. As to the use of that right-of-way by an individual, and/or can that design be changed? That's about my question.
Ms. Diaz?
Well, I don't want to reiterate everything that's been said on the
left side over here. After reviewing all the documents, I think on this I'm going to be brief and say for Tri-Hydro, the engineer for the city, they have come back with a statement that says they approve the variance request, going through all the information. And but I do want to say something about the fact that if anybody was here or looked online at our meeting, the first meeting in February, we had a lengthy discussion, which we have actually set aside for another meeting to, with some guidance from our legal staff to look at impervious cover for office and professional. Because if you go out and look at all the buildings that are on, I think it's the north side, but of 2252, none of them have been able to come in at the, what's previously set up as 1/3 impervious cover. I thought it was 35%, but I could be wrong on that. And we are looking at increasing that to a more reasonable, well, we're not looking at increasing it, we're looking at researching that to then maybe make a recommendation to City Council that something is wrong with our current percentage of impervious cover if virtually every single building that's on the north side has gotten a variance. And what we're trying to do with the new ordinance is make the, make what we have in the ordinance appropriate for the type of land use. We even said that 35% seemed to be fine for residential, but it was not, obviously, for office and professional, and more than likely not going to be appropriate for light commercial. And therefore, I'm just saying, I don't have an issue with the variances on the first part.
I have to ask the city administrator and zoning administrator as well. She wears two hats. Is it appropriate for me to ask the parties that are present, the engineers and the architect, some of these questions? Can we direct questions to them during the public hearing? Oh, that's right. We're out of the public hearing. It's a discussion. At this point, during this discussion, is it appropriate for us to ask them questions?
You may ask questions of the city engineer. If there's any further questions that you need from the petitioner, you can ask those questions as well.
Okay. That having been said, to you, my commissioners on the left, do you have any questions that you want to direct it to the experts, if you will, that are in the audience already? Ms. Kane?
Do you want to finish asking your commissions for comments?
Can go. I was trying to get it finished on that side and move over to this side, not repeat the same questions, let's put it that way. Okay, we'll start on the end. Mr. Jacquemin, please.
Thank you. The only, I too echo some of the issues that have been brought up from my fellow commissioners. But the question I have for, I'm glad to see that you're implementing the permeable concrete pavers. That's a great feature to have, especially in our area where we are in that aquifer water quality area. I guess the question I have for that is, as far as the maintenance, what type of maintenance is going to be required? I guess that will go to our engineer. What type of maintenance is going to be required on those pavers? Is it going to be some type of sweeping involved?
Yeah, there'd be some sweeping, also some high pressure washing to keep the surface impervious. So,
okay.
And a lot of it will depend on the. So yes, it'll depend on
use. There's several products that are on the market, and then some maintenance. And we've asked for, depending on the product they're using, basically an O&M type procedure that they'll follow to best keeping practices to keep it in service.
Thank you. That's basically all the questions I have for this.
Thank you. Dave?
I pretty much agree with all the comments made so far. One compromise could be with the pervious cover pavers, just to extend it into other parking spaces on the property if they were concerned about that. I personally don't believe it's going to affect anyone's home values by having 42% cover versus 35, but perhaps that would be a compromise. Also concerned about the legality of the 2 feet. I assume that the driveway was platted that way, perhaps for some safety reason, to keep it as far away from 2252 as possible. So I think if that was it, if that's really the only place it could or should go, I think safety would trump everything in terms of traffic coming in and out of there. But I think that needs to be looked at. If it can move 20 feet and that's going to allay people's fears, well, maybe it's worth it to replat it. My concern also would be to have the parties all sat down together. It sounds like we have lawyers talking to one another, which maybe that's not always the best first step, or maybe there's been lots of conversations, I don't know, but it just doesn't seem that way. Seems like these things could have been hashed out. We appear to be at loggerheads here between the HOA and the business, and I think Ms. Blackwell has shown she's a very responsible business owner in the community. And I think we have very responsible homeowners in the community. We'd like to see that continue. But I think people sitting down for 15 or 20 minutes could figure this out.
You have anything else?
That's all I have.
To the commissioners, well, I had written down several things. Most of them have been asked or answered. I guess I can start off with asking the parties present some of the questions I had. Mr. Willis, had you guys looked at other options to increase your impervious cover?
There we go. We've actually been working with the city engineer for about 4 months on this project, trying to come up with a conclusion to decrease the impervious cover. And our last proposal was to consolidate the parking spots and use the impervious concrete. And I know the maintenance of the concrete brought up. There is a document in the folder or the file I gave y'all that describes the maintenance of concrete, which we will follow. So if y'all are interested in looking at that, that is on the information I provided.
Maintenance, you know, is one of the concerns, but I see a whole lot of other parking spaces that want change to pervious cover, and that implies cost. Does it cost that much more to have pervious cover from impervious concrete?
Yes, the install cost of the pervious concrete is greater than regular concrete, but it's also not just the cost of the concrete, it's the maintenance and the longevity of that concrete too, the maintenance cost over time.
The other thing I had written down was, and I don't know if it's appropriate, I know there was some discussion in city council about parking, off-street parking. Is it appropriate for me to bring up what the city council decided in the month in terms of off-street parking? Some of the concerns here seem like they're about parking, and is that going to be affected at all by what the city council did?
So all we have on the agenda for, is the actual 2 issues of the variances at this particular point in time.
Okay.
So that's a tactful way of saying no, sir.
Thank you for your tact. That's all the questions that I had, because the other things have been covered. Ms. Owens is signaling me that she had another question.
Yes, sir. Can Can I comment now, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions for Mr. Willis. I didn't get a clear answer about the apron. On the apron that extends over, it looks like it has a spread apron, and as it spreads over into the property owner's easement, that is a city easement, so I was trying to get some understanding. Oh, goodness, I thought I had a loud voice. I'm sorry. Thank you. The apron extends over, looks like it extends over maybe 1.5 feet or 2 feet. Is that actually the way it's going to be cement over into that easement? And is that appropriate for us to go in front of another property, across in front of the property line to the next property? Could you talk about that, please?
Are we on? There we go. So yes, it actually will be constructed very similar to how it is drawn. So the property line stops at that dashed line where the dot is in the corner.
And then it spreads.
And then it spreads. And the reason for that spread is for truck access, mainly for fire
rear
department,
wheel, the
for
wheel
the
that-
radius. And that is a 25-foot radius requirement for those fire trucks to enter the property.
And because it's an easement that belongs to the city.
It's not even an easement, it's public property.
Public property.
Yes.
Okay, and that runs throughout that whole property, up and down that whole front of that, I think there's like 3 lots, that's just the one lot, but there's 3 lots there, so that will continue all the way through that type of process.
Correct. I want to say there's over 40 feet between the property line and the edge of pavement.
Okay, that's very interesting, thank you. And the other issue, could you clarify for me, we've talked about the concrete pavers on the parking, and then there's parking spaces. Total, could you clarify how many parking spaces you have for this property that's over 8,000 square feet?
There are 49 parking spaces total, which equates to 4.7 spaces per 1,000 square feet. The industry standard for a project like this is 5 spaces per 1,000.
And you have handicap parking so designated with a
Yes.
handicap ramp in the back? Is that the way?
It's in the front.
In the front.
It's indicated there. We are required by law to have 2 handicap spaces.
With the staircase and,
There's no stair. It's a ramp. Everything is flush, so there's no ramps, no stair, or, I'm sorry, there is a ramp, standard curb ramp, but there's no stairs or anything like that.
okay. You're going to occupy how much of the percentage of the building for the insurance agency and rent how many, or lease out how much of it?
It'll be roughly, it's just under 75% will be owner occupied, with the remainder being lease space.
Okay. Thank you.
Dave, you have any more questions to the participants?
Mr. Willis, I'm a little confused, I know about the flare out in the driveway and turn in and all that other stuff in there. There was comments made that we were going over into the private property or private property easement, supposed easement between each properties. You know, there's always an easement, either 5 feet each side or whatever it may be. At what point, if the end of the property line comes on the dotted line here, is that drive or the development over into that easement?
There is actually no point that our driveway is over our property line.
Yeah, I understand this. I was just wondering, because we had a citizen comment that stated that.
So I think,
Over into that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think what the citizen was saying was where, if you can scroll back to the top, they are maintaining this piece of land here, which I guess they have sprinklers and things in. Sorry, I'm using the wrong screen. But this is actually part of the public right of way. So our property line actually ends at that dot right there. I'm not, does that answer your question?
Yes. So I understand where it comes out, and if you look straight ahead on the property, thinking your property line goes to the edge of the pavement, then you would be in front of or encroaching on that. Since it does not, it's public property, then that statement becomes kind of null and void.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, any other questions to the participants on my right? Go
I have
ahead.
one more question. Any rain harvesting being proposed?
We are not proposing any rain harvesting.
As a group, we kind of talked over and honed in on the impervious cover. We kind of talked over and didn't hear any more mention of the fence along that line.
It's just part of the special use.
There we go again. Trying to keep on track, you're right, trying to keep on track. Then, I guess we're ready for a vote amongst my commissioners, unless I get the eyebrow from the attorney again. It may be pointed out that I really, as a chair, don't have a vote unless there's a tie. In interest of transparency, we vote right now. Can I have a motion for a recommendation? I'm getting the hand again.
Could you make the motion separately for each variance request? Vote on each request separately,
Okay.
please.
Can I have a motion for ordinance number 13, 6.1.4.5 regarding impervious cover?
I make a motion to approve as presented.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second to approve as presented, ordinance number 13 regarding impervious cover. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Now may I have a motion for ordinance number 13, 6.1.4.3 regarding the side yard?
I make a motion that we approve the motion as requested for 15 feet down the side property line.
Second.
And I have a motion from Ms. Owen, and I have a second from Mr. Jackman, approving the side yard variance. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Now we can move on to B, 4B, which is a petition by Sean Willis on behalf of ACTC Investments for the issuance of a special use permit for construction and operation of a one-story, 8,974 square foot professional business office building with associated sidewalks and parking spaces on property zoned office and professional, B2, located at 18875 FM 2252 Garden Ridge, Texas, further described as Lot 10, Block 12, Forest of Garden Ridge subdivision. This time, I'd like to have a public hearing starting at 7:24 p.m. All that want to speak on this petition?
Go ahead.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I have Mr. Willis speak first regarding this variance.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
No, sir.
So to present the case for the special use permit for the ACTC investment property, we are proposing a special use permit for a professional office building located at the corner of FM 2252 and Tarpon Pass. As we previously said, the building will be occupied by T. Blackwell Insurance. They will occupy just shy of 75% of the building, with the remaining 25% for tenant space. They are anticipating in the next 5 to 10 years to grow into that space and wholly occupy the building. Tenants are not known yet. They do have the ability to be selective on who they will allow to lease their space. We don't anticipate any kind of high-use retail sales types of businesses. The types of businesses that we are going to seek to lease that space would be like businesses like insurance companies, mortgage companies, title companies, doctor's offices, attorneys, real estate, generally professionals. We're not looking for any kind of high traffic use for that lease space. The owner currently, as the space has been designed, we have space for 22 employees inside. So we have adequate parking for their growth and to accommodate future tenant space. And as Ms. Blackwell said, they don't have a lot of high volume traffic from customers and patrons visiting the business. This is going to be a Class A office building. It's going to have nice finishes. It'll be the actual third Class A office building in Garden Ridge at the southern border of our city. As far as the building materials we're proposing, we've got the renderings of the building up here. The primary building materials are stone and stucco. We've got stone accents at the entry points. The larger entry point in the middle on the top rendering is the actual entry for T. Blackwell office. The one to the left is the smaller entry for the future tenant spaces. It's anticipated when Blackwell does occupy the whole building, that secondary entrance will be an employee entrance. We're proposing a metal roof. We're trying to blend the architectural style into the neighborhood, proposing more of a residential style office building versus something that's very modern or traditionally looks commercial, if you will. We are also proposing to do some wood beam accents at the front there where Ms. Blackwell's entry is. The bottom two renderings are, the one on the left is a view from FM 2252 in Tonkawa Path. The other is coming in the driveway off Tonkawa Path. If you go to the next slide, please. These are the architectural elevations that we prepared. We do have the stone carrying around the front and the two sides. It does continue around the back partially, but the main elevation of the back is all stucco. We do have some large windows for her employees' work area there on the left-hand side on the top elevation. You go to the next slide, please. As far as lighting, there will be no site lighting away from the building, so there will be no light poles. We don't want to encroach any lighting onto the neighboring property. So all of the lighting will be in the soffits of the building. There's an example of a building up there in the corner. That's Mr. Collecting's building on FM 2252. He has no site lighting either. All of the lighting is in the soffits. So what you're seeing there is a photometric plan prepared by a lighting company for us. And what that is showing is all the light fixtures proposed in the soffits. Anything yellow receives some light from the building. Anything that doesn't have any yellow color receives actually 0 lumens from the building. We are proposing the lighting to go all the way around the building for security reasons. The next slide, please, is an example of signage. We have not designed a monument sign, but we are proposing to do a very similar monument sign as what's proposed in the corner there. It's the existing sign that is at Mr. Collecting's building where Tracy is currently leasing space at. The signs will meet the city ordinance. We're not asking for any variance, nor will we plan on asking for variance for those signs. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not planning on any lit signage on the building or anything like that. On this slide, we're also showing the landscape. I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit. So we have not hired a landscape architect at this point, but we will once we, if we're successful in receiving our special use permit. The trees that you see, that, for lack of a better word, that look like snowflakes up at the top here, those are actually the existing trees. So all these little trees here are all the trees that we're proposing to save. And you can see all the ones along Tonkawa Path. Where you see this type of tree here, this is a new tree that we're proposing. This tree here that are dashes are trees that are being removed. These trees in the back are being removed because of the grading, not because of the septic area. We you notice we're keeping these trees here in the septic area. We are using a drip system, septic system, which the drip lines can be maneuvered around the trees to try to preserve those. We want to keep as many trees as possible. The ones that we are removing, we are adding several trees to mitigate the loss of the trees there. We are also proposing, there was some questions about the fence. The fence has been removed by the request of the owner, but we are proposing a vegetative screen to supplement what is there already. So we're proposing some hedges and shrubs, which have not been prescribed yet. This one tree is existing, but we are proposing 4 additional trees along that property line to try to screen the neighborhood. And you can also see here we're trying to keep as many trees. We've got trees in this island here, existing trees around the building. Unfortunately, we are having to take some of the trees out in the back just because the grading does not allow for us to keep them. With that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a resident of Garden Ridge. I think this is a great development. It's going to be a Class A building as you come into the southern border of Garden Ridge. I guess I'll open up to questions. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. I guess we can start the public hearing at 7:32 p.m. This time I'll start. I'll ask anybody in the audience that wants to speak against for or against the variance for the special use permit to come forward with the same instructions as we had before.
Again, I'm Billy Chamberlain, 8810 Comanche Path. I'm the only adjoining property owner. When I looked at this, I'm still asking y'all to reject the special use permit. When we got our packets, it showed a fence. My question was, is it a property line or not? I was told it was going to be a foot in on the commercial property. But if you notice, if they pull in and out, they're going to be going, their headlights and everything are going to be facing right into my bedroom windows and my back patio and my living room area. So headlights is an issue. But my biggest question or concern is I served on the San Antonio Electrical Board for 10 to 12 years as either chairman or vice chair, but from what was mailed out to all 10 people within that area shows a fence 1 foot in, and now the ones that I'm seeing do not show a fence. So I think by due process, you're supposed to resend those out, a packet showing what's exactly proposed, and any and all changes we should be able to review, and that's why you give us the packets and the 15-day notice. So my question is, has due process been followed by having changes to the plot plan that were mailed out to the 10 individuals that were closely affected? So I again ask you to reject the special use permit. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else wish to come forward?
How are you doing tonight? Hanging in there? Okay. My name is Rod Chamberlain, 8807 Cherokee Path. Once again, as the president of the Homeowners Association, we do not have an issue with the building going in. What we have an issue with is the impact between the commercial building, commercial property, and the residential. To go ahead and say, no problem with, especially Billy Chamberlain, right next door, 100% of his lot is right next to their lot, and, oh, it's okay, we don't need to do a fence. Well, that would at least be a goodwill gesture, say, okay, we'll put something up, we'll give you the privacy that you need. And I would actually say that we consider putting the fence as long as it can be down the road. I still think it's absurd to go ahead and have, once again, an entryway be 1 foot from his property line. I realize I switched back into the other area, but I am concerned with the fact that we are going to be definitely inconveniencing that homeowner 100% because he is the one that's going to get the brunt of all the commercial traffic. So all I'm asking is what can be done to mitigate that impact to him and his family with regards to privacy, light, noise, in the visibility. You got 9 cars that are going to go ahead and park, and that's all he's going to see outside of his house. So imagine if you went ahead and you went out to your patio, you sat down to have a cup of coffee, and you looked across 50 feet, you got 9 cars parked with their headlights coming straight at you. I don't care if they're on or not, you're looking at 9 cars. I didn't know that you went ahead and bought a house next to a car dealership. So all I'm asking is let's use some common sense. David, to your point that you'd indicated, have the people gotten together? We have asked repeatedly to go ahead and have that conversation, and the answer's been no. So we would like to do it. We think there's common ground here. We'd like to have them. It's all about the commercial property and a residential area and having the two live happy together from that side. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
My name is Herb Hernandez. I'm an A910 Comanche Path. Thank you for your service. And I know you do this on a volunteer basis, like I heard Mr. Miller say. But what I'm asking here is don't disregard the 49 people that live in the HOA in Forest Garden Ridge. I hear people say here that, yeah, we all live in Garden Ridge or had lived there before. I heard a gentleman say here that, well, he doesn't live here, but I know that it's a good building or a nice building. But we don't disagree with anything they're saying here. But we have to see what you're trying to do here with the property where Billy lives. Put yourself in his position. Put yourself in his position. Would you like to have that nice big building right next to your yard? Think about it.
Anyone else?
Hello, again, my name is Keith Kinsel. I live at 19003 Seminole Pass. I am here in support of my neighbor, Billy Chamberlain. As the previous gentleman said, are you going to disregard the 49 homeowners that live in this subdivision for one person? I would really hope that that's not the case, because 49 voices have either been represented by our HOA president or they have signed a petition. Who are you going to listen to? The people who live in that neighborhood or the people who are in support of the building, which it is a beautiful building. I mean, if I were going to build a building, I'd have him build it. That's a beautiful building. But it's in our neighborhood. It's his property. Are you going to do the right thing, or are you going to make up your minds like you did on the previous variances before we ever came in to speak? Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? And at this time, I will close the public hearing at 7:40. Same instructions to the audience and citizens apply as I gave the first time. This is a working meeting. We as a commission will discuss what was presented to us and ask any questions that we think pertinent. This time, I think I'll start on the right side, since I was admonished for starting on the left side the last time. Mr. Jackman.
So, in reviewing our backup documents, I guess there is a little confusion on the fence, where on some of the site plans, it does show it, there being a 6-foot wooden privacy fence, then the other ones don't. So, and then reading some of the correspondence between the architect and the city engineer, I believe they mentioned that they were going to be putting it in the, so I guess there's some confusion as to what's going to be put in. And so that's kind of my question. I'm sure that's going to be a common question to many of our commissioners.
Can I say something?
Mr. Willis.
The fence was taken out and it was communicated with Ms. Kane. But we, to represent the owners and be a good neighbor, we will offer to put the fence back in the property. We'll honor what we originally proposed. We'll put the 6-foot high wood privacy fence back in along the property line between our property and the adjacent residential property.
I guess the question I have in reference to that fence, in reading our ordinance, I believe in commercial, it must be some type of masonry, no? It doesn't have to? Oh, okay.
Our intention would be to meet the HOA fence ordinance that they have
With
set.
the cap?
Yeah, with the cap, correct.
So following the HOA requirement of the fencing as opposed to the suggestion that it's not mandatory underneath the SUP, right? Okay,
Yes.
thank you for clarifying that,
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Anything else? Mr. Jackman?
Okay.
No? Mr. Heyer?
I have nothing to add. I think that was a great compromise.
Ms. Diaz?
I have nothing to add.
Mr. Dower?
Graded those parking spots. They're coming up over there, they graded those parking lots.
Mr. Willis. One quick question for you. What are the hours of operation of the company, of business?
Daily operation is from 8:30 till 5:30. Most of my folks are there, I think, as I reference how many employees I have. So actually, they'll be doing the direct opposite flow of traffic for the neighborhood because they're leaving at 5:30 when everybody's coming home, and they're coming in at 8:30 when everybody is leaving. So it's 8:30 to 5:30 is the daily standard operation, Monday through Friday.
Okay, so any nighttime operation would be very segmented, maybe a nighttime meeting or a nighttime celebration or something like that, very seldom. So, because we were talking about headlight, lighting profusion out from that by car headlights, or since we did away with that on the no direct lighting or indirect lighting. I was just wondering about if we had any nighttime operations with that, but.
No, my intentions is to find somebody that complements a service that has the same kind of professional hours that I have, such as an architect, title company, somebody that's very similar and reciprocate business.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Yes, I just had one other question that I might ask of Mr. Willis, is that if you're going to put the fencing up, would then the visual screening of the planning, would that also take place? Or there would be maybe some planning to soften the fencing or whatever the HOA requires? Do you have any thing you could speak, any comments on that at this time, or?
But I believe we would keep the trees, and we may reduce some of the proposed shrubs, but I think we will still install some
trees.
shrubs there, yes.
But the HOA does have a requirement for a 6-foot solid fence. It's not a metal fence, it's a,
From what I understand, they have a standard wood fence with a wood cap, is what I understand.
and then as we were discussing, it is a daytime visit, not a nighttime visit. And as Ms. Blackwell stated, there's no extracurricular activities in the evening. So anything that would come might be Ms. Blackwell coming in at night, 8 o'clock, to pick up papers or something, but there's not any businessing coming and going at after hours, basically. So that would be the comments on business after hours, after 5 o'clock.
So 8:30 to 5:30 is traditional work, and that's what the plans will be. I might go in and work early in the morning or stay late in the evening, but the incidental issues it might be if I have once a quarter, I might have an evening event to do community outreach. But it looks like the city has already addressed that concern with parking by eliminating parking in the last city council meeting. So it'd be once a quarter, and it's community outreach programs that I do to do fundraising for our local nonprofits.
Okay, thank you for expanding on that. Thank you very much. The other question I had for our discussion was on the special use permit. Since this request is for 75% of that building, and there was an option to lease the other 25%, the special use permit is for the use of the 75%, and then if the other part's going to be leased, you'd have to come back in for another special use permit, or is it for the whole building? What am I missing here for some reason?
The special use permit will be as it's stated predominantly in, on the agenda. It will be for the construction and operation of a one-story
building. That's it.
The specified square footage, professional business office building with the associated, that's what the special
business.
use will be issued for.
Okay, not for the square footage of that, building.
It'll be for the total square footage of the building.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. It was a little bit confusing. Thank you. I think it's appropriate for that area. That land has been designated office and professional. This is an office and professional building, and I don't see any reason why that would not fit in that environment.
I do have another comment. It's okay.
Ms. Diaz?
Yes, now that the owner has said they will put up the fence, I'm thinking headlights and having to look at cars should not be an issue now, if I'm looking at this correctly. Well, headlights probably wouldn't be an issue except when it gets dark at 5:30, but again, there's a fence. So now, Mr. Chamberlain doesn't have to see headlights, nor does he have to look at cars.
Any other additional comments from the commission? Any questions of the participants from the commission? Then I think it's time for me to ask for a motion for the petition by Mr. Willis for a special use permit for the construction operation of the building. I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the special use permit in the petition by Sean Willis on behalf of ACTC Investments.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. So our recommendation from the commission will be to city council, just to recap, will be to approve the 2 variances and also approve the special use permit Somebody stop me if I start to lie. And we'll move on to citizens' comment period. Move on to citizens' comment period. This comment period, you do not have to have signed up for. We have a total time limit of 20 minutes. If anybody else has anything to say, at this point in time, come up, state your name and your address, and again, sign in with the city secretary after you finish speaking. Does anybody wish to speak?
I'm Billy Chamberlain. Everybody knows where I live by now. I do appreciate the fence being put in because that's a big concern of seeing my bedroom and, you know, even if I'm walking around in my den or my back patio. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the owner doing that. So my biggest issue now is still the driveway into my easement, but I really do appreciate that one compromise. Hopefully we can get a little bit more maybe in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. Anybody else?
You come have it for me, I don't know. Rod Chamberlain, 8807 Cherokee Path, Garden Ridge. Tracy County, thank you for the fence, appreciate it every time. I still would like to know if it's reasonable, if it's what the cost would be associated possibly trying to move that driveway or entryway further away from the property line. I don't know what it was. I don't think we decided. We just knew that something had to be done, but I don't know if it's really practical or cost effective or whatever. I understand why it was designed that way, but even if we can move it a foot, 2 foot, I mean, that's all I'm asking.
Ron, you're addressing the commission, the audience.
So if it's reasonable, I appreciate that big time. I don't know what it would take to do it, but as I know we go to the next process, I just don't know if it's possible, but I'm asking. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Then we're moving on with the agenda. With agenda item 6. At this time, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I so move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor? Aye. Aye. It's unanimous. We are adjourned at 7:53 p.m. Thank you.
And let everybody know that we're going to take till 8 o'clock and we're going to start the city council meeting. For those of you that may not have understood, the first meeting, the meeting you just saw, was for planning and zoning, the duly appointed board to consider this, to ask questions, to entertain all of the comments, and then to give a recommendation to council. Council will meet at 8 o'clock. The original posted meeting time was 7 o'clock. By law, we can go later, but we can't go earlier. In other words, we can't surprise somebody. So feel free to remain. We'll start the council meeting at 8 o'clock, and the council meeting is going to mirror what you just saw, frankly. There's nothing else on the council agenda other than this, but keep in mind, as you're waving at me, keep in mind that the council is the deciding body, and the council will make their own decision based off of recommendations and any other information that they ask for. Thank you.
I was, the reason why I asked what type is that, that's like, I asked Larry Brander, I was wondering, what's the industry standard?
I didn't know if you knew that the